The housing market in Arizona is at a breaking point. For decades, Arizona represented affordability, opportunity, and the chance for ordinary people to own their slice of the American dream. Families from across the country moved to Phoenix, Tucson, and countless desert suburbs for the simple promise that here, unlike California or New York, you could buy a home, raise your family, and build wealth without going broke. But those days are slipping away. Today, the median home price in Arizona has skyrocketed to more than $422,000, according to Zillow. That means a traditional 20% down payment on an average home here costs over $84,000, a staggering sum for working families and even middle-class professionals. That doesn't include closing costs, property taxes, or the ongoing financial burdens of ownership. Renters, too, are struggling, as monthly rent payments have risen sharply, eating up income that might otherwise go towards saving for a home. Arizona is not alone in this crisis. Across the country, from California to Texas to Florida, housing affordability has become one of the defining challenges of our time. But in Arizona, the pain feels particularly acute because affordability was always one of the state's greatest draws. So how did we get here? And more importantly, what can be done to help the middle class, the very people who form the backbone of Arizona's communities, find a way back into the housing market? To understand the depth of the problem, it's worth looking at the unique pressure squeezing buyers today. Historically, Arizona was one of the cheapest metropolitan markets in the nation. Phoenix often ranked alongside Atlanta as a model of affordability. Young families, retirees, and professionals relocating from the West Coast saw Arizona as a place where the dream of homeownership was not just possible, but expected. Fast forward to today, and Arizona has become one of the most expensive housing markets in the nation. Wages have not kept up with cost, and the middle class is being priced out at alarming speed. At the heart of the issue lies supply and demand. For years, local governments, neighborhoods, and regulatory bodies have restricted how and where new homes can be built. Developers complain of a death by 1,000 cuts, where zoning challenges, permit delays, and community pushback create endless hurdles. While residents argue they don't want new construction crowding their neighborhoods, they also lament the lack of housing options and soaring prices. The contradiction is glaring. Meanwhile, Arizona has watched from the sidelines as other states, particularly California, experiment with bold, if risky, solutions. In California, voters are preparing to weigh in on a unique initiative designed to help the middle class directly. Unlike traditional down payment assistance programs, which are income-limited and typically reserved for low-income or first-time buyers, this new proposal would open assistance to a broader segment of the population. The idea is simple. Offer down payment help not just to first-time buyers, but to any buyer, with a particular focus on new homes. The program, if passed, would allow a buyer to obtain a first mortgage as usual, but then finance most of their down payment through a second loan, essentially stacking mortgages. For example, on a $700,000 home, instead of scraping together a $140,000 down payment, a buyer could put down just 3%, around $26,000. The state would then step in with a second mortgage covering the rest of the down payment, roughly $150,000. On paper, this could make ownership accessible for families who could never save that much cash.
But here's the catch. The monthly mortgage payment would soar. Factoring in principal, interest, property taxes, and HOA fees, a buyer could easily face a monthly payment of $4,500 or more. Critics argue this simply swaps one barrier, the down payment, for another, the crushing monthly cost. And yet, there's an undeniable appeal. Middle-class families desperate for a foothold in the housing market might accept the risk of higher payments in exchange for a chance at ownership. But as Tom Simplot, former Phoenix councilman and former director of the Arizona Department of Housing, points out, this approach fails to address the root of the problem. The real issue isn't access to loans or down payment support. It's the fundamental shortage of homes. Until more houses are built, prices will remain out of reach for ordinary families. The supply problem isn't unique to Arizona. Across the United States, years of underbuilding have left the country millions of homes short of demand. Economists argue that unless local governments ease zoning laws, streamline permitting, and actively support new development, no amount of creative financing will fix the crisis. That's where Arizona finds itself in a bind. On one hand, community resistance often blocks large-scale development. On the other, state leaders have been slow to push bold solutions. The result is stagnation, where families sit on the sidelines watching housing costs climb while opportunities slip further away. Interest rates add another layer of complexity. Over the past several years, as the Federal Reserve raised rates to combat inflation, mortgage costs skyrocketed. Buyers who might have afforded a $400,000 home at a 3% interest rate suddenly found themselves priced out when rates doubled. Today, many would-be buyers are waiting on the sidelines, doubling up with roommates or living with parents, hoping for relief. But experts warn, the moment rates fall again, demand will surge. With limited inventory, prices could spike even higher, leaving even more families locked out. It's a vicious cycle, where affordability always feels just out of reach. For middle-class buyers in Arizona today, the situation is dire. Many are finding themselves in the same position as their peers in California, forced to rent indefinitely, delay family plans, or move to more affordable states. This exodus threatens not only Arizona's housing market, but its broader economy. Homeownership isn't just about having a roof over your head, it's about building wealth. Generations of Americans have used homeownership as their primary pathway to financial security. Without access to that opportunity, the economic ripple effects are massive. A healthy economy thrives when families build equity, pass wealth to their children, and invest in their communities. When that cycle breaks, inequality deepens. The middle class, already squeezed by rising healthcare, childcare, and education costs, finds itself permanently shut out of the biggest wealth-building tool in American history. Arizona does have some programs for first-time homebuyers. Local industrial development authorities in places like Phoenix, Tucson, and Maricopa offer mortgage revenue bond programs that provide down payment assistance for low-income buyers. But these programs are narrow in scope and don't solve the broader challenge facing middle-class families. So, what is the way forward? The answer, according to housing experts, isn't more creative financing schemes, but rather bold action to expand supply. That means rethinking zoning laws, reducing bureaucratic red tape, and pressuring local governments to approve developments more quickly. It also means rebalancing the conversation, where neighborhoods and city councils stop blocking construction out of fear and start recognizing the larger economic benefits of growth. Arizona faces a stark choice: continue down the current path, where middle-class families are squeezed out, or take proactive steps to ensure the next generation can afford to live, work, and build their futures here. Housing affordability isn't just a market issue, it's a social and economic one. Without real solutions, Arizona risks losing the very thing that made it attractive in the first place: opportunity. The dream of owning a home shouldn't be reserved for the wealthy few. It should be accessible to the teachers, nurses, police officers, and small business owners who keep Arizona running every day. But unless leaders confront the supply crisis head-on, that dream will remain just that, a dream. For now, the middle class in Arizona continues to wait. They wait for interest rates to fall, for new homes to be built, for programs to emerge that actually address their needs. But every month of waiting means prices climb higher, competition intensifies, and hope slips further away. The American dream has always centered on the promise of home ownership. If Arizona wants to preserve that dream, the time for action is now.